what a great crowd. So happy to see everybody here today. First of all, I'm Laura Nelson. I'm the president and CEO of the National Cryptologic Foundation. And welcome to our second annual Cocktails and Codebreakers event. We can say second now because we had one last year, and we're going to have another one next year. We are pleased to once again co-sponsor this event with the Intelligence and National Security Foundation, who have become great partners and supporters of the National Cryptologic Foundation. First, a special thank to all of our sponsors: Sandbox AQ, Mantech, Leidos, Black Cape, Thales Trusted Cyber Technologies, GIBA, Tower Federal Credit Union, Sim Software, Squadra Ventures, Apira Avatars, University of Maryland Global Campus, Carasoft Technology, Clearance Jobs, and the intelligencecommunity.com. That's a lot. It's a mouthful. Thank you. And also to our host committee, Tony Verstandig, Richard Chilton, Orrin Falkowitz, and Booz Allen Hamilton. Thank you. So since last year's event, we have seen quite a bit of change at the NCF as we continued our strategic planning process and further developed our partnership with the National Security Agency. Through the process, we updated our mission statement to reflect the partnership by advancing the nation's interest in cyber and cryptology. And these efforts include educating citizens to be cyber-smart individuals, developing pathways for the future cyber and cryptologic workforce, engaging and convening partners to address emerging cyber and cryptologic issues, and continuing our traditional sport of the museum and industry. We are commemorating our cryptologic history and those who served. With a few other personnel changes, with the retirement of Mark Lepker, who is here today, thank you, Mark, we brought on board a brand new, Mark did a fabulous job for us. We brought on a new education director, Dr. Alicia Jordan. Alicia is here in the back. She is an experienced educator who has served as a teacher in the classroom and the principal of multiple schools. She's a force multiplier as we advance our education mission at the NCF. We also have our new Convening to Act initiative, and that's beginning to take shape under the leadership of Kevin Keaton. For our first venture, we're excited to partner with NSA and other stakeholders to assist the public with public awareness engagement for post-quantum cryptography, otherwise known as QRC. We will host our first convening of government, academia, and industry experts to accelerate the migration of firmware to QRC on December 4th at Maryland Live. We will host additional sessions on this topic early next year and also address some other topics beyond quantum. We have several board members here today, including Kevin Phillips, Tony Verstandig, and Teresa Shea, and maybe Guy Filippelli. I didn't see him come in. Also acknowledge Whit Diffie, a former board member who is here today. And also, and other staff changes we have, we brought on a new finance director, Freit Weitzel, who is here. And I just want to close by saying none of this would be possible without the hard work of our fabulous staff who pulled this together. Christine Harding, Rebecca Diamond, Evelyn Zarenko, Elaine Saluski, and from INSA, Peggy O'Connor. So I am really, now it's my turn to introduce Suzanne Wilson-Heckenberg, who's the CEO of INSA and INSF.
Thank you, Laura, and thank you to the NCF for the partnership for the second annual event. So I'm very pleased that we can be here today to support you all. And good evening to everyone in attendance. The INSA Foundation is a 501c3. As many of you all are aware, INSA is a 501c6, but we're pleased once again to be here. Our foundation, INSF, works to advance the intelligence and national security field as a career choice. In addition to some of the white papers and programming that INSF produces, we also help multiple individuals with scholarships throughout the year. One I'd like to mention this evening is the Letitia A. Long Endowed Scholarship. It's for women pursuing STEM-focused careers in the intelligence and national security community. Very important here this evening with so many women in STEM looking for jobs in the intelligence community and also here in the room. So perhaps maybe there is a female cryptologist who has a future career in the intelligence community right here among us. But our scholarships program will open up in March of 2024. Would encourage you all to look for messaging on our website as well as emails. And in closing, I would like to thank Laura and the entire team for their partnership this evening. I'm very much looking forward to the conversation. And with that, I will now turn the microphone back over to Laura. Thanks so much.
Okay, I'm going to now introduce our guest speakers today. Today we are pleased to have two of our DoD and intelligence community leaders as our guest speakers. The Honorable Ronald S. Moultrie has served as the Undersecretary of Defense for Intelligence and Security since June 1st, 2021, where he oversees the intelligence security organizations within the DoD that includes multiple agencies and military organizations. Prior to this role, he served in senior leadership positions throughout the DoD and intelligence community, including the CIA, ODNI, and the National Security Agency, from which he retired in 2015. I had the pleasure of meeting Mr. Moultrie in 2001 following the downing of the EP-3 in Hainan Island in China. We worked together on the Cryptologic risk assessment team, and since that time, he has been both my mentor and friend. General Paul M. Nakasone is the Commander, U.S. Cyber Command, and Director, National Security Agency, and has served in these positions since May 2018. General Nakasone has held command and staff positions across all levels of the Army, with assignments in the U.S., the Republic of Korea, and Afghanistan. His previous positions include Commander of the U.S. Army Cyber Command, Commander of the Cyber National Mission Force, and is the Director of Intelligence at ISAF in Kabul, Afghanistan. I would like to take this opportunity to personally thank General Nakasone for his personal engagement as we navigated challenges with our plans to construct the Cyber Center for Education and Innovation, but more importantly, staying true to the concepts we had for the CCEI, ensuring that a building serving that purpose is constructed. Thank you. Furthermore, for providing the NCF with the support to lay the groundwork for a meaningful partnership between our organizations. And then finally, our moderator for today is Greg Myre, an NPR National Security Correspondent with a focus on the intelligence community. Before joining NPR, he worked many years as a foreign correspondent covering conflicts around the globe, including assignments in South Africa, Pakistan, Cyprus, Moscow, and Jerusalem. In his years abroad, he has traveled to more than 50 countries, reporting on a dozen wars. In the past year, Greg has spent over 6 months in Ukraine covering the war. We're happy to have Greg back with us for another NCF event. Thank you. Gentlemen, please come to the stage.
Laura, thank you so much for putting together such a wonderful event, and thrilled to be back here again, so really appreciate it. General Nakasone, Undersecretary Moultrie, thank you for joining us here tonight. This is great. So you guys are not exactly strangers. You guys have known each other. You talk a little about how you guys met, how you know each other, do you still like each other?
Well, I'll start. First and foremost, let me thank the NCF Foundation, the National Cryptologic Foundation, everyone for putting this on. Thank you all for being here this evening. I know that you all have things that you could be doing, but really appreciate, one, this being put on, and you're taking the time to talk with us. I want to thank you too, sir, for narrating. And then General Nakasone, my friend and colleague, thanks for all that you're doing. I mean, you're a busy man these days, and you know, you certainly have things you could be doing tonight, but thank you all. My recollection of General Nakasone goes back to the time that he was serving as an MA for the director of NSA. So that was quite some time ago. And he had a couple of less stars at that time.
No stars.
I was trying to be polite about it. But he had a few less stars at that time. But just a great guy. And you could tell at that time he was destined for senior leadership and destined for 4-star command. So we're fortunate to have him. And I won't spend too much more time on it other than to say that our partnership and relationship has grown throughout the years. I rely on his counsel. I call him frequently, or I send him notes. I think what he's doing today and what he's done with this agency has just been absolutely fantastic. So.
Thanks so much, Secretary. Let me also begin with a thanks to the National Cryptologic Foundation, our tremendous partner at NSA, and also INSF for hosting this. And I would also say to the sponsors, I know how much that means to us to be able to have this platform to talk tonight. Secretary Moultrie is right. We met several years ago. I was the executive assistant to General Keith Alexander. I was a colonel outside of his office and watched what he did, and I thought, this can't be that hard. But then as Secretary Moultrie came in to be our Undersecretary of Defense for Intelligence and Security, think of my reaction. Fantastic, we have someone that understands our agency that's going to be my boss at the Pentagon. So it really has been really very fruitful for us.
Great, great, great. General, I've spent a lot of time in Ukraine, and the thing I hear over and over again from Ukrainians is they praise the intelligence assistance and help that they're getting from the United States and the cooperation. Any examples, any details? What can you tell us about that cooperation?
Well, I think we have to begin the story even before the 24th of February 2022, when the President made, I think, a very, very important decision to say, hey, we're going to take some of the insights that we have in terms of what Russia's going to do, and we're going to really release it to the broader world. Now, think of that, and think of the discussions that were ongoing at our agency. We're going to do what? When? And we're going to say what? But at the end, the outcome is pretty clear, right? You're able to build a partnership. You're able to disrupt an adversary. You're able to impact the Ukrainians in a very positive way. And we have followed this up in terms of how do we look at our sharing more holistically, our sharing with NATO, our sharing with Ukraine, our sharing with a series of different partners that I think really reflects how the department has changed a bit. And I think Secretary Moultrie can probably talk about this even more eloquently, but I see us looking in terms of how do we build new partnerships, and how do we use the the competitive advantage of our nation, which in many times is our intelligence, to be able to provide those insights.
Yeah, would you like to
Yeah, just to build upon what General Nakasone has said. We both have been in this business a while. A number of you have been in this business, in this system, supporting national security and intelligence for a while. What I said at the onset of this crisis, and early on in the crisis, was it was the best intelligence that I had seen in my 40-plus years of being in this business. And I think I sent you an email, sir, to that effect, saying the best intelligence from the insights that we were able to provide, from the information that we provided to policymakers, the decisions that they made, as General Nakasone said, to, one, take that information, and then the President of the United States making what I consider a very gutsy call to say, we're going to release that intelligence. General Nakasone and a number of us kind of said, right? No,
so
that was the words that we said.
Were you surprised in a good way, or do you think this could go wrong? There could be, I want to do this, but this might not work out.
Sources, methods, perishability, all those things that you've grown up with, right? Can you really release something like this? The answer was yes, right decision. We did that. Our partners followed suit. We were able to help a country that I think few people gave an opportunity or a chance to really sustain itself against a much larger adversary. We've been able to help them sustain themselves. The international coalition that we built, not just with what we've done within the intelligence community, but the international coalition that we have built, the enduring partnerships and relationships that we have now, and what we continue to do with new policies, what I would call revolutionary policies that we have for sharing and disseminating. Those things will pay dividends down the road. They're paying dividends this evening as we look at the situation that's going on in the Middle East.
But I think the other part of that also plays to the flip side of our mission at NSA, right? We were always known for our signals intelligence, deep foreign intelligence that we collect. But the other piece is cybersecurity, right? And so being able to share information intelligence has to be done securely. And that's where we have spent a lot of time. And how do we do this securely and be able to, have the confidence that what we're sharing isn't leaking out the back end?
Yeah, let me just I know we're going back and forth, but one last point on this. The one last thing that I would say that I said to the Secretary of Defense, the work that Cyber Command, NSA were able to deliver over the last 20 months or so didn't happen the week before, it didn't happen the month before. It was investments, it was a work done by a number of you sitting in this audience that really ended up saving the day and paying dividends. So it tells us we had to invest, not just today for what's going on today. We have to invest today for what's going to happen in 3 years, 5 years, 10 years from now. And I think that's one of the big lessons.
Yeah, let me just pick up on that a little bit. The initial Russian invasion back in 2014, and then the Ukrainians got hit with some very bad cyber attacks around 2015, 2016. I believe we had an issue in 2016 with the Russians as well. And I got the sense that there was a fair amount of cooperation, that, you know, both as victims of Russian cyber, that a cooperation and partnership developed more strongly than it would have otherwise. And that's, by the time we got to 2022, there was already seemingly pretty strong cooperation and partnership. Is that fair to say?
Partnerships are built on people, right? I mean, if you think about from 2016 to 2022, 4 different times we send a hunt forward team from US Cyber Command into Kyiv. So that means 4 teams are going in there that are meeting partners in Ukraine that trust each other. And so by the time the last team goes in December of 2021, they're calling back to us and saying things are different here. They're very, very serious. They move their data out. They've done a number of things that are unique to what we had seen before. And you know, I attribute that a lot to the work of the Ukrainians.
Mm-hmm. And the question I get asked by editors all the time is, well, you know, why aren't the Russians carrying out more cyber attacks in Ukraine? I know they're trying, but they haven't done anything that we've been able to see from as a journalist or in the public realm that's been hugely disruptive. Is that a surprise to you, or did you think, nope, we've got good defense there, the Ukrainians have good defense? It's the Ukrainians, it's the U.S. government, it's Microsoft.
I'll start with this one.
Yes,
sir.
please.
There you go. So, whenever you see the general, take a look at it and go like, okay, I'll start. Yes, sir, got it. You know, I would say about it is the Russians, we've seen them underperform in all domains. I think in the kinetic world, they underperform. And you know, it's one of the things that we have to go back and look at, and one of the lessons learned was, what are the assumptions that we had about the Russians going in? The things that we, all of us here, grew up with in terms of the Russian bear and how capable it was and how prepared it was, and 12 feet tall, if you will. I think that they underperform in the kinetic domain. I think they underperform in the command and control domain, the leadership domain, the equipment domain, everything else. I would say that cyber was probably not too much different from it, but General Nakasone, over to you, sir, for your thoughts on that.
It started with an attack on Viasat. I think that was the most successful piece, but little did the Russians know that, you know, that there's a partner that will come in and provide communications from space that was so critical to what was going on. This is a little bit of the story, but I think we need to be very, very cautious in terms of, you know, doing a victory dance too early. And this is a little bit of the paranoia that we live with every single day. What should we be looking for? Are there indicators there? They're a learning adversary, and we should never forget that.
Yes, sir.
Got it. I'm sure a lot of people in this room already know this, but on the very first day of the full invasion, on February 24th of last year, the Russians went after Viasat, the commercial satellite network to which the Ukrainian military also used, and that was an attempt to knock out. Okay, no more hard questions on Russia, I promise. Let's turn to China. Okay. General, are you seeing shifts in Chinese intel targets? You know, do they seem more focused now on tech they're being cut off from? I mean, I know there are ongoing attacks for years and years and years, but has it shifted because they're now being cut off from specific technologies?
I'm not sure that I'm seeing a shift necessarily, but here's what I am seeing. I'm seeing a country and intelligence apparatus is very, very capable. You know, the fact that that they can look broadly and have campaigns across a number of different continents, and they're, you know, having success in being able to exfiltrate a certain amount of data, that gets my attention. But here's the other piece that I think we shouldn't forget is the fact that as we look at China as, you know, our pacing challenge, I also think we need to think about the advantages that we have. And that advantage begins with partners. Okay, think about the partners that we have, partners, foreign partners, international partners, industry partners. This makes a difference. This is what we've seen in Russia, Ukraine. This is the game changer, right? We get to scale with the private sector. We get to scale with a number of different partners that provide us a unique geographic or technological capability that we didn't have before. But I would tell you that, as we take a look at China, our most challenging, adversary right now as we think about the future.
Mm-hmm. Secretary, is the U.S. getting better at protecting itself from China? I mean, it was pretty shocking. Even a few years ago, you might hear big American companies go to China with their computers, with their phones, and not even realize how vulnerable they were. Are we as a country, because you have this sort of unique vision with dealing with ODNI, NSA, CIA, or what are you seeing in terms of the government and the private sector being able to protect itself?
Yeah, I think one of the things that General Nakasone said early in that response that he just gave you, they're the ultimate learning adversary is how we describe them, if you will. They understand great power competition, they understand what makes us a great power, and what they are doing is trying to emulate us in many, many ways. What they're trying to do is steal the things that they don't have. It serves them research, development, investment costs, and all those other things. And so what we've done with the help of Cyber Command, with the help of CISA and a number of other organizations, and the private sector, which has been very instrumental in helping us too, is to understand what they are trying to do to us, if you will. So the way I have described it within the Pentagon is, when I was back at the National Security Agency, what we try to do is understand our adversaries, if you will. What Chinese have done is done the same thing to us. What makes the United States a great power? And it's everything from our ability to project power to our ability to do complex operations, to do cyber type operations, if you will. And then how do they acquire that same capability? And so us being able to understand their playbook, if I can call it that, and then work with partnerships across the interagency, with partnerships internationally within the national security apparatus, is allowing us to get better. Are we winning? People always ask me to say, we're holding our own, but they are a very determined adversary.
I think the largest change, the one that has really garnered our attention, is we published last May a cybersecurity advisory that talked about China in a number of different critical infrastructure sectors. We called it living off the land.
Yep.
And while previously we had thought about an adversary that was stealing our information, our intellectual property, it looked as though they were doing none of that, but yet were positioning themselves perhaps for future crisis or conflict. That's a significant change, and we have now, obviously really focused in on how do we deal with that. But that, to be very, very blunt in answering your question, that's been the major change that I've seen.
Got it. So related to that, let's talk about artificial intelligence for a few moments here. I'll throw this out to either of you. Is it going to be an advantage or a disadvantage? It seems like there's a lot of opportunities and a lot of challenges there. Talk to me about, one of you can talk about the good stuff, one of you can talk about the bad stuff.
So we have used artificial intelligence at our agency for a number of years. That shouldn't surprise you when you think about our foreign language capabilities. If you think about even things like being able to detect and address vulnerabilities within our networks, this is something that's ready-made for an artificial machine learning type platform. Where we're looking at it now, though, in terms of generative AI, is both the advantage of being able to utilize this technology, but also the challenge. For someone who has spent the past 3 elections heavily involved in safe and secure elections, you can think about the challenges of what generative AI could provide to our nation with an adversary that wanted to use it. At the agency, what we are focused on right now, though, is artificial intelligence security. How do we ensure that what our companies are doing out there in the broader ecosphere are protected, and that intellectual property is protected from a series of adversaries that want to steal it?
I would just say, net, I think artificial intelligence will be an advantage to us, not a disadvantage to us. It's going to be here, so we might as well make it an advantage instead of saying, "Oh my God, it's terrible, let's get rid of it." It's not. You're not going to be able to get rid of it. What I would say, it's kind of a cradle-to-grave problem that I've asked people to think about and to look at, if you will. So cradle-to-grave, what do I mean by that? So I think we're going to have to look at everything from how do we understand artificial intelligence in terms of, and this is first on recruiting, just bringing people into our organization, if you will. If somebody is using something like ChatGPT and they're generating their resume, their entire dossier, if you will, do the Chinese or the Russians make someone who looks exactly like what we would want, and somebody who looks too good to be true, and they come in and their whole background is actually based. So from a counterintelligence perspective, it's a challenge for us. But it's also an advantage because we can go out and find the skills that we need. So I just turn it and say, okay, they're doing that to see what the ideal person looks like. We use that to find what the ideal schools may be, or the institutions may be, or where we can find these nuggets of gold where we can go out and bring people in. And so we use that all the way through the system, and it gets to the operational side that General Nakasone talked about, how we then take this and employ it in what we call an ethical way in the Pentagon. How do we use it ethically to do the things that we need to do, right? Because it can be used unethically, and we worry about that with personas and all these other things that are out there. But more importantly, how can we use it to help us with autonomous things? How can we help us to understand smart technologies, right? So you have smart cities and everything else. Eventually, that will help us in very smart domains, each domain. And then how do you net those domains together, if you will? So artificial intelligence has that promise. For us, it's how do we harness it within the interagency, within the government, within the intelligence community, to begin to understand, one, what it can do, what it can bring. How do we work with partnerships, and how do we work with others in the private sector to help us think about it, and then how do we find those individuals who can help us move it into the future?
General Nakasone, you've spoken out a couple times on the reauthorization of Section 702 in the Foreign Intelligence Security Act. I suspect most everybody in here knows what that is. You may give them a brief explainer, but just talk to us how critical you think that is and what happens if it doesn't get renewed, 702, which would allows the government to monitor foreign individuals abroad without a warrant. Is a very valuable tool. What happens if it expires on December 31st and it's not renewed?
Let me take it from both a quantitative and a qualitative viewpoint. There's no doubt, as we take a look at the quantitative contributions of this authority to what we do as an agency, 59% of the Presidential's daily brief based upon 702. 20% of all of our collection based upon 702. 85% of that is solely sourced to 702. That's the quantitative piece of it. But let's also think about the qualitative piece of it. You know, the last time it was reauthorized in 2017, 2018, we talked a lot about the importance of counterterrorism and what 702 provided to it. But I would share with you, if you think about, you know, our ability now to be able to track Chinese precursor chemicals for fentanyl. 100,000 Americans have lost their lives over the past year. We have authority that allows us to understand what an adversary is doing to be able to ship this to the United States. To me, that seems like, you know, we certainly should reauthorize it. But I think part of the discussion will be is, as this plays out in Congress and this goes through, it will be, you know, a discussion of how do we ensure that there is the trust and confidence of the American people. And with that, I suspect that there will be another number of different areas that Congress will look at to say, this is how we would like to reauthorize it, but with these provisos.
Are you having conversations? I mean, where would you say that the process, is it completely stalled at this moment, given the dysfunction in Congress?
There's a tremendous amount of discussion that's ongoing right now. You can imagine policymakers from the White House and from our Office of Director of National Intelligence always engaging on this. Our oversight committees asking us to come to talk about that. Oversight committees like Judiciary that are asking questions about this. There's a lot of activity going on with this, so I'm very hopeful that this will be reauthorized.
And would you expect some changes that might have to be negotiated on this?
I suspect that there will be changes, no doubt.
I'd like to talk a little bit about retaining talent, which I know is a big issue for both of you. And this is perennial. This comes up all the time. But Secretary, you've mentioned some specific things you're trying to do. Can you tell us a little bit beyond just saying, yeah, we got to retain talent? What are you actually doing about it?
Yeah, this is one of the most important things that we do. I mean, one of the first questions I received from the Secretary of Defense when I took the job was, how do we find people, Ron, like you, and bring them into the community? And he was talking about people who had experience and had done all these things in different jobs and so on and so forth. And I said, sir, I think you have probably brought in a lot of Ron Moultries already over the decades, if you will. We don't retain them because they get better offers, because they have other things that they can do, because we don't pay competitively, if you will, because, as some of my colleagues in this room have said for years, the inside doesn't look like the outside, right? The inside looks like fluorescent light bulbs and all these other things, right? And the generations coming in now doesn't want that. So one of the things I think we have to do is continue to accelerate the pace of modernizing what we do on the inside. From a pay competitiveness, I think we have to get better there. One of the things that I'm really focused on is a thing I call workforce mobility. And so let me just unpack that just for half a minute or so. Workforce mobility. So I find in my discussions with individuals who are coming in, with the chief human capital officers of the intelligence community, of the defense intelligence and security enterprise, that people don't want to come in and spend 30 years in this business anymore, right? They want to come to a job that they can do for maybe 4 years, 5 years, 6 years at the most. They want to be able to go out on the outside and be able to come back in, right? We make that almost impossible to do that. There may be security people in here who don't take my clearance, but what we've had in the years is that the security people have said, once you leave, you're dead to us, right?
Yeah.
You can't come back ever again. That's just crazy, right? We have ways now with the digitization of things like the SF-85 and SF-86 that many of you filled out, if you will, that we can actually follow what people do on the outside and know almost instantaneously if something's occurred instead of waiting 5 years to do it. So with that, if we can put the policies in place, and I'm responsible for intel and security policies in the Pentagon, if we can put those in place for people, I think we can allow people to potentially go out to the outside instead of saying, well, I would have loved to come back, but you made it very hard for me to come back. We do it surgically. We're bringing back people, right, who are seniors, and we bring them back after they've been out for a while. But we don't do it on a large scale. That's something that I think that we're going to have to do. That will help us partly solve this problem, but I also think that we're going to have to get better at our messaging. We're going to have to get better with the things that we're doing on the inside and making people's lives a little bit more like it was on the outside, so they're not coming in and giving up a cell phone that they've had from age 2 now. And that's hard, right? Cell phones are pacifiers for people. Well, let me say it. For children, right? Not for people. But no, if you've grown up with a cell phone, and we did some study on this when I was at another agency, CIA. We did some study on this and said, when did people get their first cell phone? Back 15, 16, almost 20 years ago, it was people were getting at age 7. Now, children are getting their first cell phone probably 2, 3 years old. They're getting tablets probably long before that, right? They pacify people. You bring them in and you go, lock it up and put it in your car. There's no air conditioning. The battery's going to be dead when you get out. But that's what we do to people. Who's going to come in and want to do that and make less pay and have the conditions that we have? We need to change all that. The great thing is we have the support of the Director of National Intelligence. Everything we talked about, by the way, up on the stage here from 702 to whoever, Avril Haines is just a fantastic partner with both of us in helping us do that. Have the support of the Secretary to look at mobility and all those things. I think we can get it done. I think we can at least start it. And hopefully we can get it done in the next few years.
Let me begin with, I think, 3 points as we consider this. Let me first of all give a little bit of landscape about our agency. So we are just experienced our 3rd largest hiring year in our 71-year history. We are in the process of hiring half of our civilian workforce over the next 4 years. Average age at our agency, 42 years old and dropping.
That's good.
85% of our agency hired since 9/11.
That's great.
The largest generational grouping, millennials and Gen Zs. So that means you were born since 1980. Okay, you know, I'm thinking about this, right, in my head. And so what we have always talked about in terms of being able to be an attractive employer is the fact that we have a tremendous mission. Everyone comes for the mission. You never want to leave. COVID-19 taught us something different. People do leave. And if we don't think differently about our workforce, that workforce will not be the same workforce that we've always been able to leverage in the past. So to Secretary Moultrie's point, what we have done is, first of all, let's take a look at our onboarding. When you come to our agency, you should be proud of a 70-year history of solving the nation's toughest problems. Secondly, well-being. We've got to think differently about well-being at our agency. We need to think about, you know, a holistic approach to the people that come to work at the National Security Agency from when they start to when they actually leave. Third thing is that, to Secretary Moultrie's point, why do you always have to work at one desk, one terminal? Why don't we have some type of hybrid, you know, ability to even log on in a place like Fort Detrick if I live north, or perhaps down at Quantico if I lived in the south, or, oh my gosh, maybe we're going to do things unclassified. We have an unclassified center now, the Cybersecurity Collaboration Center. That's a really good exemplar. And the final thing, to Secretary Moultrie's point, is we've always thought about recruit, train, retain, and now it should be return. return. We just hosted an alumni organization for NSA 2 weekends ago. We had about 300 folks that came back and says, hey, I'm really proud to be part of, or having been part of the agency. Oh, really? Would you like to return? And so this has been attractive to people. So we're starting now to get those applications back in. But our mindset has changed tremendously, Greg.
Yeah, this one's coming more
go ahead.
important.
Yeah, please.
I think the other piece here is also joint duty, allowing people to go serve in different agencies, if you will. When I took my first assignment outside of the building at CIA, it was, hey, you're going to the dark side, right? It was just, it's, hey, how could you do that? How could you go work with those guys, right? And it was all these disparaging remarks about doing this and everything else. And, you know, I thought it was important for a lot of different reasons. There were some things that we needed to do. But I also, when I left NSA, I went over on assignment, I actually resigned, came back, you know, I resigned, joined CIA because I couldn't do things as an NSA over there. They weren't going to listen to me. So I had to do things as a CIA. But when I left NSA, I wrote a letter and said, hey, love the agency. Hope you'll allow me to come back one day because I, you know, would love to be there. But there's things that I need to do. I can't do them as an NSA officer, so if you would allow me to do it, that would be great. I was just fortunate enough that some individuals allowed me to come back and serve, and I retired for what I consider to be the home team, if you will. But we can't make it as difficult for others as it was made for me to be able to do that. We have to encourage people, I think, to go out and work in other agencies and even work in the private sector, gets back to mobility again, and then be able to come back, right, and welcome them back into the workforce. So I think it's an important point I just want to make.
Right. How big of an adjustment was COVID? I mean, I learned I could, you know, work in my shorts and a t-shirt and take a nap in the middle of the day and still get my job done. But it was, you know, you guys couldn't, you and your staff couldn't, maybe you could, but your staff couldn't work at home all day with classified material. So how traumatic was it to try to adjust to COVID and get through that period? And what did it teach you at the other end?
So we made the adjustment. You know, if you would have asked me prior to March of 2020, can you ever imagine that half of your agency is going to be, you know, away from the building for a week and then they're going to work the next week? I mean, this is what we had to do in terms of being able to take care of our workforce. Yeah. What did you learn from it? What I learned from it, I learned just a tremendous amount of empathy. I mean, you saw the impact across our workforce, whether or not it was aging parents or kids that were learning by, you know, Zoom or different challenges that they were undergoing. And I would just tell you, for our agency, we said we have to treat our workforce differently coming back from this. And I think that was an important piece that we learned.
Yes, sir.
Did you have a big outflow? I mean, did you lose a lot of people? To both of you.
So we had, I think, a larger attrition rate. You know, after that, for a period of about a year, it's back to now pre-COVID levels. But yes, we did have a bit of a spike there.
Mm-hmm. The one thing I'll just add to it is all the things General Nakasone said. I think it teaches us that we can find ways of allowing people to do things differently. Not everybody has to come into the room with no windows and sit at a desk and work there full time. So I think we need to continue to look at the lessons learned from COVID and work through those things. From a policy perspective, you know, one of the things that I tried to do, you know, we had these mandates for vaccines and other things. And there were some people who didn't want to take it. Some people had religious reasons they didn't want to take it. Some had medical reasons. Some just felt they didn't want to take it. So one of the things I was very concerned about were good athletes who we needed to bring back into the system. I didn't want to see those people kicked off the raft, so to speak, or kicked off the island because they had reasons that they didn't want to take it. That didn't mean that they were evil people or not good Americans, if you will. They had reasons that they didn't want to do it. So one of the policies I put in place was no one will have their clearance revoked because of a decision not to take a vaccine. If they have to leave our system for some period of time, let them leave. But I do not want clearance revocation to be a reason that somebody cannot come back in. So it's all the things that General Nakasone talked about, but it's also the policies that we need to put in place to ensure that if something like this happens, and it will happen again, maybe not for another 100 years, we hope, but it will happen again, that the mindset that we have, the policies that we put in place, and the way that we approach the last pandemic will help us in the future.
Mm-hmm. Secretary, I want to talk what seems to be the sort of very unique and interesting career you've had in terms of working at several different intelligence agencies, of now having a position where you're overseeing or cooperating or coordinating with them, and what sort of insights that's given you in terms of what has improved, how you've had the interagency has improved, and in ways that maybe could still be done better.
Yeah, the thing I always say about my career is I've been fired from a lot of jobs, and that's just one of the things that, you know, I beg to get rehired again. So, you know, they always seem to take me back, and I appreciate that. What I learned, which I think is a lesson that's playing itself out, going back to your first question about Russia, Ukraine, or Gaza now, and what's going to happen, I think, in the Middle East, but also Russia, Ukraine, that we're stronger with the ints that we have than we are as individual stovepipes. And I think when I first started back in this business, it was, you know, the well-tuned pistons that we had, but none of those pistons worked together to make the engine run as smoothly as it could, if you will. And so we started talking about how do we use this end to cue that end and all those other things. But those were things that were nascent conversations back then. What we've done is turn that into, I think, an art now, where we're able to do that. And that's just built into what we do and how we do our business. And I think everybody benefits from it. I think the other agencies now no longer see each other as adversaries all the time, right? There are times where some things that we do where we are somewhat competitive, and I'll say, but not combative, but competitive. But I think the value and the synergy that comes out of working with each other is really important. Not just that, but the partnerships, the relationships that you build. You know, we talk about that with international partners. We talk about that within our agencies themselves. You build those same things with other agencies, and having been able to do that very early in my career as a military person, then as an NSA, then as a CIA, an OD&I, and then serving as Secretary of the Navy. All those things just built to where the Rolodex that I have, dating myself, but you know, the list that I have of people who I can reach out to in terms of a crisis, the people who I come in. So, by the way, this is the most that I've been called secretary in the last 2 years, if you will. He refers to me as Ron, I refer to him as Paul. I told you yesterday, hey, if you're going to talk to me, call me Ron, because they all know me as Ron out here. Nobody knows me as Secretary of Moultrie. So we address each other as colleagues, as friends, not with formality that people think. Mm-hmm. And we're able to do that across the interagency. And that helps us, I think, get to the mission and do it in such a way that it's beneficial. So I think it gets back to the joint duty things that we need to do, kind of emulating Goldwater-Nichols, which is what Admiral McConnell, D&I McConnell had in mind when he set up joint duty. I think we have to just continue to do that and appreciate where the community is going. We have more work to do in that regards.
Got it, got it. General, in a recent speech you talked about the 3 Ps. Can you share with folks here what you were talking about?
Yeah, when I was at a recent conference, I talked about 3 Ps for the future. And the first P, of course, is the People's Republic of China. It's the generational challenge of our time. When I think about what we will be focused on, what future directors will be focused on, it will be China. The second P is, it's about partnerships. You know, our strong partner in the National Cryptologic Foundation, critical to what we do at NSA, their ability to outreach and be able to educate people within, you know, the realm of cybersecurity. And whether or not it's the National Cryptologic Foundation or partners that are in the private sector, international, this is what gives us our unique competitive advantage. NSA has tremendous amounts of partners, and those partners provide a scope, scale, and ability to get after very difficult problems. And the third P, it's people. It's our foundational success is our people. We can lose the technology, we can lose our tradecraft, but we can never lose our talent. And so, you know, people always say, hey, what do you think a lot about? I think a lot about our people and making sure that they want to stay at our agency and attracting the very best for the future.
And I think P must be your favorite letter because you had another phrase, persistent engagement, which you've used over the years. You want to talk a little bit about?
My first name is Paul, so I mean.
There you go. I think we figured it out.
Yeah, absolutely.
You talk about a little bit about persistent engagement. Is that still something that was something you talked about in your early days?
One of the things that, as I looked at cyberspace, the concern I always had is that we were episodic in addressing our adversaries. An adversary would conduct an intrusion into our networks, and then we would watch them conduct the intrusion, and then we would clean up the network after it was all done. We called that cleanup on aisle 9, and I hated that. I hated that, and I said, why aren't we persistently engaged with our adversaries? Why don't we act and enable our partners? Act against adversaries when they were trying to, you know, steal our intellectual property or try to influence our elections? Or why don't we go ahead and share information with a series of partners that can have an impact against our adversaries? We saw this most significantly early on in 2018 in the midterm elections. This is where Russia's small group had a pretty big impact in being able to address what was a threat from the Russians. So it's always stayed with me, and this idea of persistent engagement.
And so do you feel you and everybody else in your community is in a good position as we head into the 2024 elections?
So again, with anything, we are always very vigilant. And I think good is a relative term. I always like the thought that I'm very vigilant in being able to ensure a safe and secure election. We'll do it the same way that we did it in 2018, 2020, and 22. We're going to understand our adversary, we're going to share information and intelligence, and then we're going to take action when authorized against any adversary that thinks that they're going to interfere or influence our election.
Mm-hmm. And we're getting a little short on time. I'd like to finish up with the question. We're here at because of the National Cryptologic Foundation, and one of the big part of their mission is to inform and to educate when it comes to cryptology. Could you talk a little bit about the NSA's Centers for Academic Excellence? I looked at the list, and dozens of schools that are on that list, colleges and universities, and how that's working and where you think it could maybe be expanded.
Yeah, if you think about our Centers of Academic Excellence, I would tell you, think about the number 340 plus. 340 plus institutions that our agency has been able to work with and ensure that we are great partners in being able to, one, understand the domain of cyberspace, being able to take a look at what the next generation of education needs to be, and being able to share that information. Today we had the president of University of Maryland, Baltimore campus, visit us. UMBC is among our, biggest supporters in terms of people that we hire from. A tremendous institution built, as you well know, by Dr. Freeman Herbowski just a few years ago. He's now retired, and so today the UMBC president came in to continue on that legacy of how do we make sure that we have great centers of academic excellence working with NSA.
Mm-hmm. And General, did you think you'd be retired by today?
My wife thought I was going to be retired by today.
Want to share any plans with us?
My plans tonight are probably going to go back to work and see what's going on in the world and making sure that I can answer the questions of tomorrow. Near-term plans, whenever that day does come, when I retire, I'm going to take some time off and kind of re-baseline in terms of what's going on, and then think about the next stage of what life's going to bring. So I'm not quite sure what that's going to be yet.
Got it. Well, thank you, General. Thank you, Secretary. Big round of applause for both of our guests tonight.
Thanks, Ron.
Thank you. That was great. You guys are great.
Okay, so the bar, and there's more food out in the back now. The bar is open, there's more food out back. A few notes, Jason Fagone, who wrote The Woman Who Smashed Codes, is with us. We have books for sale and signing. You heard me mention convening effort that we're doing. If any of you, corporate or otherwise, would like to help sponsor or support that effort, please see Rebecca Diamond back there in the back. She'd be happy to talk to you. And before you go, we have swag bags, so please, and special cookies, so please pick up your swag bags as you leave. And then I'll close it out at 7 o'clock. Thank you.